Yes, it's me, Naomi. You remember my name, right? Years ago, you knew my name and the name of my husband, Elimelech. And we came from this town of Bethlehem. It was always known as the house of bread. But we lived in the days where different judges ruled over the land. Some good, mostly bad. And everyone was doing what was right in their own eyes. I think Yahweh was angry with the Israelites, and as a result, there was a really bad famine in the land. So Elimelech and I decided that there was no future for our sons and our family in Israel. And we left. I mean, you understand, right? You remember those hot days where there was no food, barely any water, and we had 2 young boys who were clearly getting skinnier from hunger. You remember those days, right? And as a mother, how could I stand by and watch my children suffer? So we left. Well, maybe Yahweh is judging me for abandoning the promised land now. You know what? Don't call me Naomi. Call me Mara. Because the Lord has been bitter to me. Because He has brought tragedy on me. I lost my sons and my husband. I left Bethlehem full. But Yahweh, He has brought me back empty. What have I done? Well, fine, maybe not completely empty. I mean, I came back with one daughter-in-law, Ruth. I mean, I don't even know why she chose to follow me back to Israel. I told her to go back with the people in Moab. For goodness sake, she is a Moabite woman. What is she going to do in Israel? No one is going to accept her. No one is going to care for her. She is better off back with her own people, worshipping her own gods. But she insisted on coming with me, promising that my people will be her people and my God will be her God. Why would she do that? Why would she abandon a second chance in life just to come back with me to Israel, to live this bitter life, to worship Yahweh who has been bitter to me, and come back to a place where there's no future? There is nothing for her here. She would end up the lowest life form, as a foreigner and as a widow. Well, I don't know. She's here. Well, she did tell me this morning that over the last few days, she decided to work in a field of this man called Boaz. Funny enough, he happens to be a distant relative of Elimelech. And from what I hear from around town, he's a godly man. I've been so worried for Ruth because she could be bullied when working in the fields. But thankfully, she has found favor with Boaz and he has been kind to her. I don't know. Maybe after all that's happened, finally Yahweh will look upon us with favor.
All right, good afternoon, Next Gen. Let's give a hand to Naomi. Really, really good. Thank you for sharing your story with us. Anyway, my name is Hannah. Nice to be here to share more about the life of Ruth and Naomi. So earlier, Naomi shared with us a little vlog of what happened in her life. And like she mentioned, their story takes place in the period of the Judges. And as we've learned in the last few weeks, it's at the height of Israel's disobedience against Yahweh. And it is during this time where there seems to be no more hope for Israel, since there was no one who did what was right in Yahweh's eyes. And it's here, in the midst of hopelessness, that we see an unlikely choice emerge. A non-Israelite, Moabite woman by the name of Ruth. And so what happened to this woman? She came up, she was an unlikely choice, and against all odds, she was the only one, or one of the few people at the time, to do what was right in Yahweh's eyes. And so the title of my message today is The Unlikely Choice. And through the book of Ruth, chapters 1 and 2, we will explore the big idea, God blesses those who exhibit believing loyalty. Now, what is believing loyalty? The definition of loyalty by the Merriam-Webster Dictionary is faithfulness that is steadfast in the face of any temptation to renounce, desert, or betray. And so to have believing loyalty to God means choosing to have faith in Him and to remain faithful to Him no matter what temptation we face to either renounce, desert, or betray Him. So, how did Ruth exhibit believing loyalty to Yahweh? Come to my first point. Ruth exhibited believing loyalty to Yahweh through her declaration of faith. And this declaration of faith that Ruth did was seen through her words and through her actions. Let's see. Ruth verse 1 verse 16. And it says, "But Ruth said, 'Do not urge me to leave you or to return from following you. For where you will go, I will go. And where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God.'" These words from Ruth was a bold declaration of faith in Yahweh. So what was happening during that time, and what led Ruth to make such a declaration of faith? So what happened at the time is that after Naomi's husband and sons died, Naomi wanted to release her daughters-in-law, Orpah and Ruth, back to their families in Moab. So with no sons and no husbands to care for them, Naomi had no means to provide for all three of them, and she knew that Ruth and Orpah stood a better chance at having a decent life back with their families in Moab. So in Ruth verse 1 to 10, we see this back and forth between Naomi and her daughters-in-law, where Naomi tells them, "Go, return to your families because I can't care for you." And then the girls say, "No, we will return with you." And I can imagine, right, in today's context, it will look something like this. Naomi, maybe a bit pego, a bit paise. She says, "Girls, it's okay. I'm fine. No need to come with me. I'm okay." And then the girls say, "No, Mom, we'll come to you. Let's stay with you." And Ruth, on one hand, right, is very sincere about it. And Orpah, on the other hand, secretly, I don't want to go, but cannot look back in front of you, Ruth. So she says, "Yeah, Mom, we will stay with you." And then Naomi continues, "No, don't come with me." And Ruth says, "No, we will go with you." And Orpah's like, "Come on, girl, can you not?" Okay, I don't look bad. "Yes, Mom, we will return with you." And then Naomi, and kind of paraphrasing what she says, "Why would you return with me? Got any future with me, meh? Please lah, go home to your family, marry another Moabite man. If God is against me, why come and suffer with me?" And now Orpah thinks to herself, "Okay, I offered 2 times already. This is the magic number 3. She said, 'Don't come,' I mean, so I don't come. And then she says, 'Okay, Mom, I'll go back to Moab and marry somebody else, okay? Bye.' And the Bible tells us that she kisses her mother-in-law and leaves. But Ruth here clings to Naomi, and she makes this declaration in chapter 1, verse 16. She says, "Do not urge me to leave you or to return from following you. For where you will go, I will go. Where you will lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God." Here in this declaration of faith, Ruth was not paying lip service to act like she was doing the right thing. She was not paying lip service to patronize Naomi. But here, Ruth was making a serious declaration of loyalty, that she would remain steadfast with Naomi, that she would care for Naomi wherever she went. Whatever price they would have to pay as a foreign widow, she would pay it. Whatever discrimination they would receive when they returned to Israel, they would go through it together. Wherever Naomi decides to go, Ruth declared that she would stand by her through it all. But most importantly, we see here the biggest change that Ruth was willing to make. She declares, "Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God." For Ruth, this was beyond a declaration of loyalty to Naomi. It was a declaration of believing loyalty to Yahweh. Maybe you're wondering, at that time, did Ruth know who Yahweh was? Did she already believe in Yahweh? I'll say maybe. Maybe she knew who Yahweh was because she just married into Naomi's family and they are an Israelite family. And so as an Israelite family, their worship is to Yahweh. But for Ruth, as a Moabite woman, her cultural allegiance was to their Moabite god called Chemosh. And we see here, Ruth was so determined to remain loyal to Naomi that she declares even to change her allegiance and worship from Chemosh to Yahweh. Now, Ruth was declaring her believing loyalty to Yahweh. And the beautiful thing about this is that Ruth chose to live it out. that declaration of faith changed not just in her words, in the declaration of her words, but also in the declaration through her actions. How did she do that? She turned away completely from her old life. She turned away from her old culture. She turned away from her old gods, also that she would now follow and commit herself completely to worshiping Yahweh. So we see here a big difference between Ruth and Orpah. Orpah, like any other Israelite at that time, even though she wasn't an Israelite, she chose what was right in her own eyes. But Ruth, a non-Israeli Moabite woman, chose what was right in Yahweh's eyes. And young people today, how are we exhibiting loyalty to God? Do we pay lip service to God when it's convenient? Do we make commitments to the Lord just because it seems like the right thing to do? Or like Ruth, when you make a declaration of faith, is it followed by a change in your life to live out what you say you will do? For example, yes, Lord, I will stop sinning in this area. Yes, Lord, I will spend time alone with you. I will do my personal devotion 5 minutes a day. Or yes, Lord, I will reach out to my friends. Are these commitments that we make lip service to the Lord? Because it's the right thing to say. It's the right thing to respond to when the pastor says, oh, will you? Yes, I will. When your grace group leader says, what will you do to follow up from this? Yes. But is there an active change in the way that you live your life? So that you will stop sinning in that area. So that you will make the effort to spend time with the Lord. So that you will reach out to your friends. Young people, Ruth exhibited believing loyalty, not just through the declaration of her faith, but through the declaration came a change in her whole life. So are we paying lip service to the Lord? Or today, young people, will you choose to exhibit believing loyalty and live out your declaration of faith? Point number 2, Ruth exhibited believing loyalty to Yahweh through living out her faith in action. Now, there are 2 ways in this story that we see Ruth living out her faith in action. The first way is she trusted in Yahweh's positioning. In other words, it also means that she trusted in where Yahweh placed her. Now, how do we see that? So after Ruth makes the commitment to Yahweh and to Naomi, she returns to Bethlehem with her. And the Bible tells us that it was at the beginning of barley harvest season. So when they arrive in Bethlehem, Ruth says to Naomi in chapter 2, verse 2, let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain after him in whose sight I shall find favor. Now, what's this about? Let's look at it together. The first part, when Ruth says, let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain. This means that Ruth was willing to go and follow the harvesters at that time and pick up any leftover grain that falls on the ground. So as the harvesters go and they pick up the barley, they pick up the grain. Sometimes they would just drop random pieces on the floor. And what the foreigners and the widows at the time was supposed to do, they were supposed to follow and just pick up whatever leftover was left for them. And this job, right, the equivalent of that for us today is the job of, one of those old aunties and uncles that go on to pick up leftover cupboard boxes, or the cans, they take it and they crush it, and then they go and try and sell it for small change. That is the kind of job that Ruth was going to be at. It's dependent on what people will leave behind for her. And so this job that Ruth was taking right now, it's not because she couldn't find a better job. In fact, as a foreigner and as a widow in that day, the only jobs that she could get was to either pick up leftover grain, or become a domestic worker for an Israeli family, maybe even a slave, or become a prostitute. And of these 3 jobs, the only one that Yahweh had commanded the Israelites to make provisions for, and we can see this in Deuteronomy 24, verse 19 to 22, for foreigners and widows was this job of picking leftover grain from the harvest. So Yahweh's command to the Israelites for foreigners and widows was to leave behind grain left over from the harvest so that they can go and take it for themselves. And so Ruth now, coming into under Yahweh's law, she knew that this was her lot in life as a foreigner and as a widow in Israel. It's a very humble job, right? But she didn't mind it. In fact, here is where we see that she completely trusted Yahweh's position for her life. She trusted that if Yahweh had placed her in that position, surely he would release his favor to provide for her in that area as well. Now, how do we see that? Ruth says, "Let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain." That's Ruth's act of obedience to Yahweh's law, and Ruth embracing the job that she had to do. She didn't look down on it. She didn't wallow in self-pity. Why must I do it? She didn't. She said, okay, if this is what the law commands me to do, then I will trust Yahweh and I will do it. But she doesn't stop there. She continues to say, "After him in whose sight I shall find favor." And this was a declaration of faith and trust in Yahweh. Because at that time, it's possible that Ruth wouldn't be granted to access in a field to glean on. Or worse still, she could be bullied by the men in the field. They could attack her. Or the harvesters could be mean and not allow her to pick anything that they drop behind. But Ruth, she put her trust in Yahweh that he would provide favor for her. And we see later on in Ruth chapter 2 that Yahweh honors Ruth for her faith in him. Of all the fields that Ruth could pick on, she chose to glean the one that belonged to Boaz. God led her to the field of Boaz, and we see God's favor in that. And Boaz, at that time, he's known to be a worthy man, which means a godly man. And we'll learn more about Boaz next week. But the point here is, Yahweh saw Ruth's faith in action, and he honored her by leading her to a place of favor, to Boaz's field, where we see in chapter 2, she was given so much favor with both Boaz and her field and her workers in the field. So what did Ruth do in that field? And here we see the second way that Ruth lived out her faith in action. She worked hard. Everybody say, she worked hard. Ask the person beside you, are you working hard? Oh, I see a lot of people shaking their heads. So, Ruth chapter 2 verse 7 says, "The workers reported to Boaz about Ruth, so she came and she has continued from early morning until now, except for a short rest." Now what does this show us? This shows us that Ruth worked hard. Ruth now finding favor and being the opportunity to glean in the field of Boaz, she doesn't just sit back and do nothing. She didn't have an attitude of entitlement and just wait for people to drop. Oh, they drop, then I pick up more. She didn't. Instead, she worked hard. She followed the harvesters wherever they went, diligently picking up every grain they left behind, all the way from early morning to the end of the day. Some of us, we work half day, we're like, okay, I'm done, right? But she worked hard all the way from morning to the end of the day. And it was because of her humble attitude, her hard work. The workers around her noticed that and gave her favorable reports about her to Boaz. And even more so, because of her hardworking attitude, God gave her even more favor with Boaz and his workers. So what does this show us? This shows us that God honors hard work. Tell the person beside you, say, God honors hard work. God honored Ruth's hard work so much that he did not just give her favor with Boaz and his workers. He even provided her an abundance of grain, so much so that by the end of the barley and wheat season, Ruth had gathered more than enough for herself and for Naomi to the end of the year. How many of you even have enough groceries to the end of the year? End of the month. Okay, maybe not groceries. Stationery? Also don't have, right? Can you imagine? For Ruth, just picking up scraps, she had more than enough grain to last her and Naomi to the end of the year. And so, from this, in the next 2 chapters, we see that because of Ruth's virtuous character, because of her believing loyalty in Yahweh, God blesses Ruth tremendously. What do we see that God blessed Ruth with? God blessed Ruth by giving her a godly husband in marriage. Or rather, this is kind of a remarriage because it's a second husband. But God gave her a godly husband in marriage. And this is not just about finding a husband for Ruth. In fact, marrying Boaz was a huge turnaround for both their circumstances. It meant that both of them now have entitlement to lands. They have entitlement to servants. They will be completely provided for under the house of Boaz. It meant no more grain picking, no more life of destitution, but a life of abundance. And on top of that, we see that Yahweh was so pleased with Ruth's believing loyalty that he gave her the greatest honor of being the great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother of our Messiah, Jesus Christ. That is the greatest honor that Yahweh bestowed upon Ruth because of her believing loyalty. And so, like Naomi said in Ruth chapter 1, verse 21, she said, I, Naomi, went away full, and the Lord has brought me back empty. But here, because of Ruth's believing loyalty, Ruth can say, I, Ruth, came back to Bethlehem empty, but the Lord has restored me to the full. Today, Next Gen, do you find yourself in low positions sometimes? Do you find yourself in humble situations or places that you'd rather not be in? Sometimes it's not even by choice or by fault, but some reason you're in that situation that you don't want to be in, that low situation where you feel completely unnoticed. Today, we can learn from Ruth not to despise the places that God has placed you, but to have faith that God has placed you there for a reason and to be faithful to work hard in it. For the young adults, when you start work, you start at the bottom of the food chain, right? And you find yourself in situations that you didn't ask for or didn't want to be in. Maybe sometimes you feel even like a victim to what life throws at you. It's like no matter what, your boss, hey, can you do this for me? Yeah, my subordinate will do. This project, yeah, I can do. Hey, you do, huh? Yeah, I see a lot of nodding heads, huh? And you're wondering, should I just take this in or should I stand out and fight against my boss? Do you react in a situation by fighting your way out of the position, striving to prove yourself worthy, or even worse, putting others down so that you can rise up to the top? Young adult today, no matter what position you are in, take a moment to seek the Lord's favor, to seek the Lord's direction, to seek the Lord's desire for your life. Do not despise that place that you are in. Because if God has placed you there, surely His favor is upon you. What about those of you in school? Perhaps you find yourself in a low position in your class, in your club, or your CCA. And maybe you think at times that you are nobody because nobody seems to care about you. Nobody seems to care about your low position, about what you do for the club, for the CCA, for your school, or even your friends. My question to you young people today is, what will your posture and attitude be in that situation? Will you choose just to skip the session and pretend like you're sick because nobody cares? Or will you begin to put your faith in God and start asking God for His favor and His direction for your life? Young people today, will you choose to exhibit believing loyalty to God through your declaration of faith and through your faith in action? To close, let me share this story with all of you. This is the story of a personal friend who migrated to Australia with his family. And so this friend of mine, when he was in Singapore, he was doing very well in the banking industry, working in one of the top banks in Singapore. But then the Lord spoke to him to move to Australia. And in obedience, my friend and his family packed up and left for Australia. And so in that transition, it meant that he had to leave his well-paying job and move. And when he arrived in Australia, he couldn't find a job. He tried to apply to different banks, different financial institutions, but no one would give him a job. And after months of searching, finally, he was offered a job by a friend. Make a guess what kind of job this is. As you make a guess, worship team, I'd like to invite you to come. So this job, he became the chocolate man. My friend was offered an entry-level job in a chocolate factory as a chocolate worker, literally the guy who makes your chocolate bars. Can you imagine that? From being a pretty decent high-level banker, right now, the only job he could find was to be a chocolate maker. Well, since he didn't have any other options, he just took the job because he needed the income. So he started working as a chocolate man. And when I spoke to him and I caught up with him, he would complain to me and he tells me every day he would go to work, he would put on the uniform and look at himself in the mirror and say, what am I doing in this uniform? I used to be a banker, wearing nice fancy clothes, but why am I in this uniform? Then he would go to the factory and he would make the chocolate, measure the temperature, roll out the chocolate, all the different things he has to do. It was so mundane, it was so boring. And day after day, he asked the Lord, Lord, Why have you led me here to Australia to work in a chocolate factory? To make things worse, at the time his wife lost her job. And then they had a second kid. And then they had mortgage and rent to pay. And what he was earning from the entry-level chocolate job was not covering their expense. They had to start dipping into their savings. It was a very hard time. But then my friend, he shared with me that he had believing loyalty. He trusted that if God had led him to Australia, God certainly has a plan for his life. And so he trusted where God had placed him. He trusted, God, if you have placed me in this chocolate factory, in this position, then I will work hard. I will be a faithful servant. I'll do my best in everything that I do. And so every day, day after day, for 10 months, he trudged to the chocolate factory, made the chocolates. He chose to be faithful. 10 months into the job, the manager came to him and told him that there was now somehow a managerial role open and available for application. And the manager had noted on his hard work and good work ethics and knew that, hey, this guy had a background in finance and strategy. So he said, hey, why didn't you apply for this job? And so he applied for the job. And guess what? He got the job. And the Lord blessed him so much that he went from a level 2 entry-level chocolate maker to a level 9 managerial role. That is a 7-level leap up. This came with a big pay raise, competitive to what he was getting in Singapore. And he knew when that happened. He called me and he said, Hannah, God is faithful. And I'm so glad that I had believing loyalty to him, that I trusted him, and I saw his hand in my life in this season. So young people, wherever God has placed you, in high positions or low positions, choose to exhibit loyalty in living out your declaration of faith and in your faith in action. And I believe that when you do, you will see God's hand upon your life in every season. Let's bow our heads and close our eyes and respond to the Word of God. Today, I believe God is calling us to exhibit covenantal, believing loyalty to Him through living out our faith, through the declaration of our faith, through living out our faith in action. And there are two groups that I believe God wants to minister to today. For the first group, perhaps you've been struggling with making empty declarations to the Lord. Week after week, you've been saying commitments, declarations of faith that you struggle to follow through. You know, you give promises to the Lord about things that you want to do, changes in your life that you want to make so that you can grow in your relationship with Him, but somehow this declaration of faith, the spoken word, has not transited to action. Today, as I'm sharing this, you know that this has to stop. And today you say, Lord, I want to stop making empty promises. Lord, I want to stop paying lip service to you. God, it's not about what I say, but it's about how I live out my life. And today, if that is you, you're saying today, I do not want to pay lip service to God anymore, but I want to commit my life to God through my life, through my actions. If that is you, raise your hand to the Lord as a response to Him. Thank you for your hands. Thank you for your hands. Today, the Lord wants to minister to you because He knows, perhaps for some of you, that lip service has been crippling you. Because every time you fail to do what you say you will do, there's this little voice that tells you, you're not worthy. Today, the Lord wants to take you out of that place. He wants to restore to you that faith in action. Today, if that is you, raise your hand to the Lord. Thank you for that hands. And the second group that I want to minister to are those of you who struggle in your place in life. Maybe it's a job situation that you want to get out of, and no matter what you do, you just can't seem to get out of that job. And you're asking God, God, what am I doing here? What do you have for me that's here? Why are my friends rising up to the top, but I'm still here? Today, if that is you, The Lord wants to restore His favor in your life. He wants you to see that there is a position that He has given to you. If that is you, raise your hand to the Lord and say, yes, Lord, today I do not want to look down on my position anymore. God, I want to embrace where you have placed me and know and see the favor of God in my life. If that is you, raise your hand to the Lord, because I know He wants to minister to you today. Thank you for the hands. Right now, let's all stand. And for those of us who have raised your hands to the Lord, I want to invite you to come to the altar. Earlier, PJ was sharing that God is calling us to the altar today. God is calling us to this place of response so that we can be real with Him, so that we can lay down and surrender the areas of our life that we're struggling with to Him, so that we can say, Lord, it's all about you, about what you can do. And so right now, as the worship team begins to minister the song to us, come to the altars so that our leaders, our pastors can pray with you. Come.
Where would I bow to the throne of mercy?
Come to the altar right now. The altars are open.
But at the cross of grace, how great the love, how strong the hand that holds us. Beautiful, so beautiful.
Come to the altars and let's respond to the Lord.
Where would I run but to the throne of mercy?
And for those of us who are not responding to the altars, let's sing to the Lord and bow our lives before Him. How great the love, how strong the hand that holds us. Beautiful. Come, let's sing to the Lord. So beautiful. So here I bow. So here I bow to lift you high. Jesus, be glorified in all things. For all my life I am yours, forever yours. Earlier, as I was preparing to share this word, the Lord reminded me of my own journey and how sometimes you don't have to be at the bottom to feel small. And the Lord was speaking to me, Hannah, sometimes you think that the impact that you do is so small. But will you choose to be loyal to me by being faithful with that small? Will you choose to work hard at whatever it is that I've given to you so that you will show believing loyalty to me? Today, the Lord is not calling us to just ask for the big things. He's calling us to loyalty to Him. So all of us here, wherever we are, let's take a moment to respond to the Lord today and say, Lord, wherever I may be, Father, use me. Help me to be faithful and to be loyal to you. As we sing this song again, respond to the Lord. Where would I run
to the throne of mercy? Where would I kneel but at this cross of grace?
Come on, NXTGen, the altar is open.
How strong
the altar is a safe place. The altar is a place where you can have a transaction with the Lord. So I want to encourage you, if you responded to the Lord just now, come forward so that we can pray with you. Let's worship Him.
There is a Son who came in grace and truth. How great the love that carries us to kindness. Wonderful, so wonderful.